You're evicting your own son? Adam choked, disbelief cracking in his voice. Eleanor slid the deed across the table. No, I'm evicting a thief who used to be my son. Claire lunged. Eleanor hit play. We'll be rich sooner than we thought. Claire's voice echoed. They'd forged her will, faked her diagnosis, planned her funeral while she was still alive. Now the mother they underestimated had rewritten the ending, and this time her signature was the one they'd regret forever. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. He said it was a surprise gift. I didn't know the surprise was my own signature. The silk blindfold smelled faintly of lavender, her favorite scent. That's how he disarmed her. Not with force, but with familiarity. Just trust me, Mom, Adam had said, his voice wrapped in birthday cheer like a ribbon hiding a knife. You're gonna love this. One more surprise. Just one more. Eleanor chuckled softly as she sat at the dining table. Her bones ached from the damp morning, her knees whispering secrets of age. But her mind? Her mind was still sharp enough to detect shifts in energy, and Adam's energy had shifted. There were papers, thick, crisp ones, beneath her fingertips. She heard the cap of a pen click open, then Adam gently placed it in her hand. Just sign here, and one more. The pen trembled slightly in her fingers. What am I signing, sweetheart? It's part of your gift, he said, lowering his voice into something reassuring. Can't spoil it now. The doubt scratched at her, quiet but insistent, but it was his birthday smile that softened her spine, that boyish grin she'd seen since he was 4 and broke a vase just to hide a handmade card inside. She signed. 3 signatures. 3 lies. When she removed the blindfold, Adam was already cleaning up the table, overly cheerful, humming to himself. No documents in sight, only cake crumbs and the faint smell of burnt candles. That night, while brushing her teeth, she heard it. Claire's voice, light and careless, coming from the hallway. It's done. We own everything now. The toothbrush froze mid-motion. Claire laughed again. She didn't even ask what it was. Honestly, Adam, that was too easy. Eleanor gripped the sink with both hands, heart thudding like a war drum. Her reflection stared back at her in the mirror. Not confused, not frightened. Focused. She turned off the light and walked to her bedroom with the slow precision of someone stepping through memory mines. The next morning, she made him breakfast. Oatmeal with almonds, toast with butter on both edges, just the way he liked it. He kissed her cheek and said, "You're spoiling me." She smiled and asked, "By the way, what did I sign yesterday?" Adam didn't miss a beat. "Just some fun little gift paperwork. You'll see soon. Don't worry." She tilted her head. It felt like a lot of pages. He laughed. "You always overthink things, Mom. Enjoy your breakfast." Gaslight. Charm. Deflect. A playbook she recognized now that she knew it existed. After he left for work, Eleanor walked into the hallway closet. Behind old board games and her husband's dusty fishing pole, she reached up to the top shelf and pulled down a weathered wooden box marked, "In Case of Betrayal." She hadn't looked at it in 20 years. Her fingers, more steady than they'd been all week, undid the small brass latch. Inside was a manila envelope and a stack of fading Polaroids. The top photo showed her at 45, holding a baby Adam, her smile wide but her eyes exhausted. She set the photo aside and opened the envelope. Inside was a copy of her original will, notarized, clean, untouched. Dated 5 years ago. In it, Adam was named the sole beneficiary, but with clear stipulations about mental competency and misuse of power. Tucked underneath was a second sheet of paper. A name was written across it in ballpoint pen, neat, firm strokes. A name she hadn't said aloud in 2 decades. Michael D. Hanover. Her breath caught in her throat. She hadn't thought of him in years, not since that courtroom mess, not since her husband's funeral. But if anyone knew how to untangle the knots of deceit wrapped in a legal disguise, it was Michael. She pressed the paper to her chest, then folded it and placed it in her nightstand drawer. Her hands were shaking now, not from age, but adrenaline. Down the hall, she heard Claire laughing again. But this time, Eleanor didn't flinch. She was already rewriting the ending. It contains a copy of her actual will and a name she hasn't said in 20 years. I wrote that number down 20 years ago. I never thought I'd dial it. The card was yellowed at the corners, creased down the middle like it had been folded, forgotten, and remembered too many times. Michael D. Hanover, Esquire. His name was printed in neat serif letters, but it was the handwritten note on the back that made Eleanor pause. For when they come for what's yours. She stood by the window, phone in hand, sunlight bouncing off the glass panes, slicing her face in lines of gold and shadow. Her thumb hovered over the digits. She hadn't heard his voice in 2 decades, not since she'd testified on his behalf, back when his license had been hanging by a thread and she was the only character witness who showed up. Now it was her character they were trying to erase. She dialed. 3 rings. Then a familiar voice. Older now, gravel in its tone, but unmistakably Michael. Hanover. It's Eleanor Witt, she said, her voice steady. I need help, and before you say anything, I didn't call back then because I didn't want to owe anyone. You don't, he said immediately. You paid it forward. What happened? There was a long pause. Eleanor stared at the framed family photo near her armchair, Adam as a toddler on her hip, both of them laughing in the sunlight. That version of him felt like a stranger now. They forged my signature, she said, on a new will. I think they're trying to declare me mentally incompetent. Michael didn't react with shock, just silence. The kind of silence that told her this wasn't the first time he'd heard of a son doing this to a parent. I can help, he finally said, but proving forgery, especially if they used your blindfolded signatures, is hell. We'll need leverage, real proof. You still have the original? Yes. Then we've got to start. That afternoon, the house began to change. Claire brought in a new mirror, sleek, gold-trimmed, out of place among Eleanor's soft, time-worn furniture. We thought the old one was dated, she chirped. Dated's good, Eleanor replied with a smile. Dated knows where everything is. But it didn't stop there. The guest room, once a library of Eleanor's paperbacks and photo albums, was now Claire's home office. Furniture was shuffled. Her bedroom rug vanished. Adam replaced it with a modern mat that curled at the edges and smelled like synthetic rubber. They were nesting. In her home. At dinner, Eleanor watched Adam cut his steak with a confidence that wasn't his. Claire poured wine like she owned the bottle, the glass, and the story of the evening. They laughed too loud, exchanged glances when she mispronounced a word, whispered when she excused herself to the restroom. They thought she was unraveling. Good. Let them. Later that night, Eleanor sat on the floor of her walk-in closet, hands dusting the corners of an old shoebox she hadn't touched in years. Inside it, her husband's things, his wristwatch, a set of cufflinks, and under a velvet cloth, the voice recorder. It was small, boxy, a bit scratched from time, but still intact. She pressed the side button. Battery low. Good enough. She stared at it for a long moment, her fingers curled around the cold plastic like it was a weapon. In a way, it was. The next morning, Eleanor made sure to leave the dining room untouched. The recorder, freshly charged, was nestled between the sugar bowl and the second set of placemats. She calibrated it with a whispered phrase, "Record when voice is detected." Then she walked away. Let the table hear the truth. Let it catch them not in confrontation, but in comfort. She didn't need to confront them yet. She just needed them to talk, and they always talked. She hides it in the dining room. They toasted to my life, like I'd already died. The sound of clinking glasses echoed down the hallway like a funeral bell dressed up for a celebration. Eleanor stood just out of sight near the staircase, her back against the cool wall, heart thudding slow but steady like the tick of a bomb. She strained to hear over the jazz playing faintly from the living room speaker. To new beginnings, Claire giggled, the edge of a champagne flute tapping lightly against another. To freedom, Adam added, and finally getting out of this antique crypt. Eleanor didn't blink. Claire's voice dropped into a mock whisper. What do we list it at? Market's high, right? Even this old shack could pull 7 figures. Adam scoffed. The moment well, we clean house, fast. I'm thinking a modern reno, maybe knock out that ugly pantry. It's ours now, babe. Silence. Then Claire again, laughing quietly. Sooner than we thought, huh? The blood drained from Eleanor's face, but her spine held. In her robe, she turned from the stairs and walked silently back to her room. Her feet barely made a sound on the hardwood floor. The kind of walk she used to do when Adam was an infant, napping, and she couldn't afford to wake him. Couldn't afford much of anything back then, except hope. The next morning, she let herself forget. She wandered into the kitchen and opened the fridge twice, then asked Claire if they had any orange juice. "It's right in front of you," Claire said slowly, pointing at the shelf. "Oh," Eleanor muttered. "Must have missed it." Adam glanced up from his phone but didn't say anything. 10 minutes later, she returned to the kitchen looking for her keys. She opened the same drawer 3 times. "You just had them," Adam said. His tone was patient, but underlined with something else. "Satisfaction?" Eleanor patted her pockets dramatically. "I could have sworn," Claire chimed in, fake sweet. "Don't worry, Eleanor. Everyone gets a little forgetful sometimes." That night, Eleanor retrieved the recorder from under the placemats. The blinking red light told her it had been active. She plugged it into her laptop and listened. First, silence, then a rustle of clothes, then laughter. She really thought it was a birthday gift. I mean, she's not all there anymore. It's like early onset or something. But hey, works out for us. Claire's voice cut in. "I called my sister. She couldn't believe it. Said, 'We'll be rich sooner than we thought.' I told her, 'No kidding, it's like having a lottery ticket with a time limit.'" There was a pause, the sound of a lighter flicking, then Adam again. "Soon we won't have to pretend." Eleanor stopped the recording. She didn't cry. She created a new folder on her desktop. Evidence, Phase 1, password protected. 2 days later, while pretending to look up banana bread recipes, she opened a new tab on her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keys. She typed, "How to reverse power of attorney from abusive family member." Then deleted it. Too obvious. She retyped, "Power of attorney laws plus elder abuse plus forged will legal advice." One result stood out. A PDF titled, "Know Your Rights, Mental Capacity and Legal Traps." She downloaded it. There was an entire section on manipulation, hidden medical assessments, and signatures under false pretenses. In the margin, a single line jumped out. "Just because they act like you're fading doesn't mean your voice is gone." She copied the link, sent it to herself in an encrypted email labeled "Cake Recipe, Try Later." That evening, Claire handed her a small plastic organizer. "New pills," she said brightly, "to help with memory and stuff. Doctor approved." Eleanor took the organizer, smiled sweetly, and later that night flushed the pills down the toilet. The real medication, her heart pills, were still in her nightstand. She wasn't losing her mind. She was building her case. And soon, the ones sipping champagne in her living room would be choking on their own words. She Googles power of attorney reversal laws. They said I was losing memory, but I remembered everything. The attic was thick with heat and dust, the air barely moving as Eleanor pulled down the creaking wooden ladder. She coughed once, her breath catching on the scent of mothballs, cardboard, and something older. Something like time itself. The box was still there, tucked behind a stack of faded Christmas ornaments and a broken chair leg. A plain wooden chest with brass corners and a tarnished latch. No lock. It had never needed one. Her hands trembled as she opened it, not from fear, but from memory. Inside, a birth certificate with the ink slightly faded. A hospital invoice dated 19 years ago. Her wedding band, still bearing a scratch from the time she slammed it against a hospital vending machine in frustration. And under a stack of greeting cards and childhood drawings, documents, real ones, untouched, original house deed, insurance policy, medical records, bank statements, tax returns. Her will. Everything Claire and Adam had hoped was forgotten was right here, catalogued by a mother who never trusted time to protect her better than paper could. She sat on the floor with the box in her lap and let her memory unfold, not the false one they were crafting around her, but the real kind, the kind made from pain and sacrifice. Adam had been 9, just 9 when the fever wouldn't break and the doctors started tossing around words like neurological and critical. Eleanor had sold every piece of jewelry she owned, her engagement ring, her grandmother's pendant, even the delicate gold bangles she'd hidden away since college. She remembered handing them over to a pawnshop owner who didn't even meet her eye. She'd done all of it without hesitation, not once thinking of return on investment, not once imagining that years later, that same boy would forge her signature and sell the story of her mind like it was his property. That evening, Eleanor called Michael again. "I have everything," she said. "Originals, signed, sealed, undisputed." On the other end, Michael exhaled. "Then we get to work. I want to create a living trust," she said. "Lock everything down, freeze access, and I want their names off every paper they've tried to snake into." "You sure?" "I'm sure." Later that night, Adam came into her room holding a fresh folder of documents. "Hey, Mom, just one quick thing. Some estate tax stuff. We're trying to streamline your benefits." Eleanor gave a soft smile. "Can I sleep on it? My head's been cloudy all day." He hesitated for half a second, just long enough to confirm her suspicion. "Of course," he said, laying the folder gently on her nightstand. "Take your time." She watched him leave, then picked up the folder and slid it directly into the trash bin under her desk. The soft crumple of paper against paper felt better than any argument. Before bed, Eleanor opened a new prescription bottle. Inside were not her heart meds. These were sugar pills, chalky little tablets that looked just like the real thing. She slipped them into her drawer, right next to a labeled bottle of her genuine prescriptions. It was a trap, a breadcrumb, a carefully planted performance prop. She left the drawer slightly ajar, as if by accident. Let them snoop. Let them find what they wanted so badly to believe. The next morning, Eleanor caught Claire in her room. "Oh, I was just looking for a charger," Claire said too quickly. Eleanor smiled. "That drawer has nothing but junk." Later, from the top of the stairs, she watched Claire pull out her phone and snap a picture of the fake bottle. "Memory support meds," Claire texted to someone. Eleanor could barely hear the whisper of her own breath over the sudden quiet inside her chest. Let them build their case. She was building hers. Claire finds the pills and takes a photo to send to her friend. "They faked my diagnosis before I faked my memory loss." Eleanor watched the man's shoes as he stepped into her living room. Black leather. Expensive. Not scuffed like a real family doctor's. Too polished for someone who spent time in nursing homes or hospitals. His white coat was crisp, but the smile behind his wire-frame glasses didn't reach his eyes. "Hi, Eleanor," he said gently, as if addressing a child. "I'm Dr. Rayner. Claire invited me over to do a little wellness check. Just routine." Claire stood behind him, her arms folded, an innocent tilt to her head. "It's nothing serious, Eleanor. You've just been a little off lately, that's all." Eleanor looked at her, then at the man with the clipboard. She offered a faint, practiced smile. "Of course. Always happy to help," she said softly. "Will this take long? I have to finish." Her eyes wandered. "What was I saying?" Claire's smile tightened. Dr. Rayner chuckled politely. "No worries. Let's just do a few questions, okay?" Eleanor sat down on the couch, the afternoon sun slicing through the drapes in sharp lines, dust floating like lazy confetti in the light. Her hands trembled, on purpose, as she took a sip of tea. "What day is it?" Dr. Rayner asked. She looked up, blankly. "Wednesday?" "It's Monday." "Oh, sorry." She gave a small laugh. "I lose track sometimes. I guess I'm not as sharp as I used to be." Claire glanced sideways, biting her lip to hide a grin. "Do you know your address?" 415 Mulberry?" She purposely added a number that didn't exist. Dr. Rayner scribbled something. Eleanor tilted her head. "Is this for a magazine quiz or something?" No, he said, chuckling again, "just checking cognitive benchmarks." He asked her to recall 3 random words. She got 2 right, then fumbled the third on purpose. "Well," he said finally, shutting his notebook, "there are early signs of mild cognitive decline. Nothing severe, but enough to monitor. I'd recommend light supervision and a secondary signer for major financial decisions. Claire's eyes gleamed like she'd won a raffle. The next morning, Eleanor found the paperwork on the kitchen table. Power of attorney application. Her signature wasn't needed, not anymore. Just a diagnosis, just a box ticked by a willing man with a fancy pen. Adam hovered near the stove. "This is just precautionary," he said, cracking eggs. "Nobody's saying you're losing it, Mom, but it's good to have things in place." Eleanor picked up the form, nodded softly, and said, "I understand." She took it back to her room, and then she made her call. Michael answered on the first ring. "Tell me you recorded it." "Every second," Eleanor said. "The guy called my actual house a crypt." Michael whistled low. "They're accelerating. We need to move faster." "Already ahead of you," she said. "I want every asset moved. The house, the accounts, the trust, all under a private holding company. I don't care what it takes, just don't use my name." "What do you want to call it?" She thought for a second, then smiled. Wits End Holdings. Over the next 48 hours, Michael's team worked silently, surgically. By the time Claire posted an Instagram story of Eleanor accidentally microwaving a spoon, the deed had already been done. The house, their prized inheritance, their future flip project, was no longer in Eleanor's name. It belonged to Wits End Holdings, LLC, an entity run by a board that consisted of one quiet, legally vindicated elderly woman and her very sharp lawyer. 3 days later, Adam returned from the mailbox with a pale face and trembling hands. He tossed the envelope on the table. Claire opened it, skimmed the lines, then let out a noise somewhere between a growl and a shriek. "What the hell is this?" Eleanor walked in, holding a watering can. "Is something wrong?" "This letter says the house has unpaid debts," Adam snapped. "It's from... what is this? Wits End Holdings." "Oh dear," Eleanor said, setting the watering can down carefully. "I hope the new owners are responsible people. You wouldn't want to upset a landlord." Claire narrowed her eyes. "What are you talking about?" "I'm just the tenant," Eleanor said with a shrug. "Didn't you read the fine print? Adam receives a debt recovery letter from the company now owning their house. Eleanor already sold the house to her own LLC. They took my bedroom, so I took the entire house." The sun filtered through the lace curtains of the dining room, casting delicate patterns onto the tablecloth, the same table where Eleanor had fed Adam mashed peas, hosted Christmas dinners, and now laid out legal documents like chess pieces on a bloodless battlefield. She sat at the head of the table, spine straight, eyes cool. In front of her, 2 crisp envelopes, labeled, sealed. Claire and Adam sauntered in together, laughing about a TikTok Claire had posted the night before, a video of Eleanor staring blankly at a wall set to quirky music. Eleanor didn't smile. "Sit down." Claire raised an eyebrow. "Are we in trouble?" Adam chuckled. "Is this about the mailbox thing? We already called the company. There's clearly been a mix-up." "No," Eleanor said. "There's been no mix-up. There's only been a correction." She slid the envelopes across the table. Adam opened his first, still wearing that smug grin, until it vanished. His eyes darted across the page once, then again. He blinked, his jaw working like he was trying to chew through disbelief. Claire tore open hers and let out a loud, confused laugh. "This is a joke, right? A 30-day tenant notice? Are you kidding me?" "No joke," Eleanor said, folding her hands calmly. "The house belongs to Wits End Holdings now. You're no longer residents. You're tenants." "You can't do that," Claire snapped. "You're not even mentally competent." "On the contrary," Eleanor said. "Would you like to hear just how competent I am?" She pulled a small speaker from beneath the table, sleek, black, already blinking with a paired device. "Let me refresh your memory," she said, pressing play. Adam's voice crackled to life. "She's not all there anymore. Works out for us." Then Claire. "We'll be rich sooner than we thought." Then laughter. Cold. Careless. Claire's face drained of color. Eleanor tilted her head. "Still think I'm senile?" "You recorded us?" Adam said, voice low, stunned. Eleanor looked him dead in the eye. "Every word, every whisper, every time you thought you were clever." Claire slammed her palm on the table. "You sneaky, manipulative, senile old witch?" Eleanor didn't even blink. "Thank you for confirming the tone of this conversation. I'll be sharing this with legal." Adam stood up, pacing now, fists clenched. "You can't evict your own son." "You're right," Eleanor said. "I wouldn't, but my company can." She stood too, slow and steady, her silk scarf fluttering slightly as she moved. "You stole my bedroom, my house, my trust, but you forgot something." "What?" Claire sneered. "My mind," Eleanor said, her voice razor-sharp now. "You didn't take that, and it turns out that's the one thing that owns everything else." Outside, a wind chime sang softly in the garden. Inside, Eleanor reached into her bag and pulled out 2 more papers, formal, notarized, sealed with a bold red stamp. "Here," she said. "Your official eviction notices. 30 days. Pack carefully. Boxes will be monitored." Adam looked stunned. "Where will we even go?" "Someplace that rents to frauds," she said. "I'm sure Yelp has a category." Claire lunged forward to snatch the notice, but Eleanor held it just out of reach. "Don't grab, ask," she said. Claire snatched it anyway. Eleanor's voice was calm, like cold water down a burning back. "That's assault. I'd suggest you choose your next 30 days wisely. Everything you say and do from now on may become part of an investigation." Eleanor calmly hands them an official eviction notice. "They locked my door. I locked them out legally." Eleanor stood by the front window in her robe, clutching a hot mug of peppermint tea as the locksmith finished drilling the last bolt into place. The crisp morning air blew faintly through the open door, carrying the scent of fresh pine and winter frost, an odd contrast to the battle brewing inside her walls. "There you go, ma'am," the locksmith said, standing back and wiping his hands. "That's a Grade 4 smart deadbolt system. Keypad entry, voice code if you'd like it." "Perfect," Eleanor said. She handed him a generous tip in cash. "And remember, you never came here. Just a routine repair." The man nodded once, tucked his tools away, and left without looking back. She closed the door behind him, locked it with a satisfying click, and activated the app on her phone. One by one, cameras around the house blinked to life. Front door, back patio, hallway, kitchen. No more secrets. No more whispered betrayals. It didn't take long for the shift to be noticed. Adam returned that afternoon and found the hallway door leading to the east wing, her wing, locked. He jiggled the knob, rattled it, then banged twice. "Mom?" he called out, frustration already coating his voice. "Did you lock this?" Eleanor, sitting quietly in her newly secluded sunroom, sipped her tea and said nothing. He pounded again. "This is ridiculous. We live here." She didn't answer. Instead, she opened her phone and watched him live on the hallway feed, fists balled, lips moving in angry silence. The next day, Claire made her move. She posted a 30-second video to her social media, her eyes red, voice trembling in all the right places. "My fiancé and I have been staying with his mother to help her through early signs of dementia. But lately, she's been paranoid, violent. She's locked herself away and refuses help. We're scared for her, honestly." A soft piano track played underneath the clip. She added the hashtag, #elder care crisis. Within hours, the video racked up a few hundred likes, a dozen comments dripping with sympathy. "You're doing the right thing. So heartbreaking. You're angels. Hope she gets the help she needs." Eleanor saw it all and smiled. That night, she selected one file from her growing archive, short, clear, devastating. It featured Claire's voice, unmistakably smug. She didn't even ask what she was signing. Honestly, Adam, that was too easy. She created a burner email, attached the audio file, and sent it anonymously to one of the very commenters who had expressed sympathy. Then she waited. By morning, the ripple had become a wave. The woman who received the file posted it with a caption, "This is not elder care. This is exploitation." It spread like wildfire. People began commenting under Claire's original video. "Care to explain this audio? You forged documents? Looks like karma's got a voice recorder." Claire deleted the original post, but it was too late. The clip had been saved, reshared, dissected, and reposted by dozens of creators. TikTokers with millions of followers were calling it the Gaslight Saga. True crime channels picked up the story. Twitter was already flooded with hashtags, "Yar justice for Eleanor," "Not demented, just smart." Adam stormed down the hallway and banged on her locked door again. "What did you do?" From behind the door, Eleanor answered coolly, "Expose the truth, just like you exposed yourselves." Claire screeched from downstairs, "This is slander." "It's not slander if it's your voice," Eleanor replied, walking back toward her reading chair, barefoot, unbothered. Outside, a few curious neighbors stood across the street, watching the house like a live theater performance. Eleanor opened the curtains just a bit wider, letting them see her sip tea with regal calm, like a queen whose throne was never theirs to steal. She was done hiding. The post goes viral. Support pours in for Eleanor. "They aired their lies online. I aired the truth on TV." Eleanor stared at the email on her screen, the subject line glowing like a quiet trumpet blast. "Invitation, The Kendall Bright Show, exclusive interview request." She read it twice, then a third time. The message was short, professional, and direct. "We've followed the recent social media events and would love to give you a national platform to share your side. 1 chair, 1 hour, your voice." She didn't hesitate. She replied with a polite, "I'd be honored." And then, quietly, she began preparing for the war that her enemies thought was already won. She didn't tell Adam. She didn't tell Claire. Instead, she told her hairdresser, her lawyer, and the woman at the consignment boutique who helped her pick out a slate blue blazer that made her feel powerful without trying. The morning of the show, Eleanor sat in the makeup chair under the bright vanity lights of Studio 3B. The scent of setting powder mixed with fresh coffee and the sterile tang of studio air. Her hands rested calmly in her lap, not shaking this time. "You're a natural," Kendall Bright said with a smile, sitting beside her during the pre-show mic check. "The public already loves you. You just have to tell your story." Eleanor looked into the mirror, at the woman they called senile, at the mind they tried to mute, and gave a soft nod. "Let's begin." The segment opened with warmth. Kendall introduced Eleanor as a quiet force, a woman whose battle for justice had captured national attention. Then the gloves came off. A still frame appeared behind them, Adam grinning with champagne. Claire, arms looped around him. The clip of Claire's audio played clear as crystal. "We'll be rich sooner than we thought." The audience murmured. Another clip played. "She's not all there anymore. Works out for us." Kendall turned back to Eleanor. "And when did you know this wasn't just casual cruelty, but something more?" Eleanor folded her hands and looked straight into the camera. "The day my son blindfolded me and asked me to sign a birthday gift, and the moment I heard them planning my funeral while I was still very much alive." Gasps, audible and sharp. Kendall nodded slowly. "And you fought back with proof." "I fought back with truth," Eleanor said. "They forged a will, brought in a fake doctor, locked me in my own home and called it care. But they forgot one thing. My mind didn't belong to them, and neither did my story." The crowd erupted into applause. Meanwhile, across town, Adam sat frozen in front of the television. Claire paced behind him like a trapped animal. She couldn't have." "She did," Adam whispered. The segment continued. Eleanor's face, poised, clear-eyed, fierce, filled the screen. "I created a private holding company, sold the house they tried to steal. I collected audio, dates, documents. I've spent every day since their betrayal reclaiming what was mine." Kendall leaned in. "And what do you want people to take away from this?" Eleanor turned back to the audience. Her voice dropped into something low and deliberate. "I want every vulnerable person to know just because they treat you like you're fading doesn't mean you disappear. And sometimes, the quietest ones, we're just listening." Thunderous applause, the kind that didn't stop right away, the kind that meant something. The segment aired that afternoon. By evening, the video had been clipped, shared, reposted, and quoted on every platform imaginable. Sometimes the quietest ones? We're just listening. trended on Twitter. Claire's followers plummeted. Sponsors ghosted her. Adam's phone didn't stop vibrating, with rage, disbelief, and silence from former friends. But Eleanor? Her inbox filled, with support, with stories, and with one message that stopped her cold. From Lucia Delgado. Subject: I owe you everything, you probably don't remember me. You testified for me in a custody case 22 years ago. I'm now managing partner at Delgado and Kane, LLP. If you're ready to go bigger, I'd like to help. Eleanor receives a call from someone she once saved, who now owns a law firm. They said it was their home. Now even their names are off the mailbox. The first sign that everything had changed wasn't the envelope taped to the front door or the unfamiliar car parked across the street with tinted windows. It was the mailbox. The brass nameplate that once read Wit had been replaced overnight. Now, in crisp black serif font, the new plate simply read, Wit's End Holdings, no tenants listed. Claire stood frozen on the porch, suitcase handle in hand, staring at it like it had personally insulted her. They took our names off the damn mailbox, she hissed. Adam walked past her, ignoring the question. His eyes scanned the front lawn, then the driveway, then the house. Like maybe, just maybe, something would scream, just kidding. But the house was silent. At the edge of the porch, Eleanor sat in her wicker chair, dressed in her soft blue cardigan, sipping cinnamon tea like she had all the time in the world. A porcelain teacup, steam curling gently into the morning air. The faint sound of wind chimes danced above her. Good morning, she said. You can't do this, Adam said flatly, holding up the crumpled notice he'd retrieved from the mailbox. I didn't, Eleanor replied, voice mild. The law did. But you're welcome to argue with it. I believe the courthouse is open until 5. You gave us 3 days, Claire exploded, her voice breaking. 3 days? 72 hours, Eleanor corrected gently. The judge was feeling generous. It had been Lucia's doing. The day after Eleanor's talk show aired, the lawyer she'd once helped, now managing partner of a renowned firm, had called in favors, pulled strings, and filed motions so fast they practically smoked. Within 24 hours, an emergency petition had been approved. Fraudulent guardianship revoked. Power of attorney overturned. A formal eviction notice granted, with immediate execution. Lucia didn't just speed up the process. She lit the match Eleanor had been waiting to strike. Now, as the second day began, a black moving truck rumbled up the driveway. The sound echoed across the cul-de-sac, causing curtains to twitch and neighbors to step onto their lawns with cautious curiosity. 2 movers stepped out, opened the back doors, and waited for instructions. You brought movers? Claire spat. Like we're garbage? Eleanor sipped her tea. Movers are for belongings. You're not being thrown out. You're being removed, legally and gently. You're insane, Claire muttered. You've lost it. On the contrary, Eleanor replied. I found it. My name, my rights, my voice, and I've already packed your lies into labeled boxes. Adam looked up at her, hollow-eyed. I can't believe this. She stared at him long and hard. Neither can I. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Instead, he turned away, walked slowly back into the house, and disappeared down the hallway. Claire paced, fuming, her voice breaking as she called her sister on speakerphone. She's actually doing it. She's throwing us out like we're nobodies. I don't even know where we're going. The sister said something about staying in their guest room. Claire rolled her eyes. No way, not with her husband. Eleanor said nothing. She didn't have to. The creak of the moving truck's liftgate said enough. Inside, movers boxed up Claire's designer shoes and Adam's monogrammed whiskey glasses. They packed clothes, gaming consoles, a ring light, a stack of unopened mail. In the back bedroom, what had once been Eleanor's sewing room, one of the movers lifted the mattress off Adam's bed. Ma'am, he called out, there's something under here. Eleanor stepped in, slow but firm. A worn manila folder sat between the slats, sealed with duct tape and labeled in Adam's handwriting, Revised Will Plan, Phase 2. She knelt slowly, heart thudding once, twice. Her fingers brushed the folder's edge. The tape crinkled under her touch. She looked up at the mover, then toward the hallway where Adam had disappeared. Whatever trust she'd buried long ago, it hadn't been buried deep enough. A hidden file is found under Adam's bed, titled Revised Will Plan, Phase 2. Turns out, the forged will wasn't their first draft. The moment Eleanor peeled back the duct tape and unfolded the manila folder, she could feel it, like touching the husk of a snake that had shed itself in silence and slithered deeper into her home. The first page wasn't shocking, but the third one made her hands go cold. Revised Will Plan, Phase 2. Handwritten notes in Adam's blocky print covered the margins. Names with lines through them. Inheritance structures, timelines, even fake incident descriptions of her memory lapses. Claire's name was in every bullet point. At the bottom, scribbled in red ink, once POA confirmed, push to reassign bank trusts. Claire, use wellness check as backup. Her jaw tightened. Her fingers flexed against the edges of the page, as if holding it any longer would make her sick. She sat down on the edge of the bed, the old wood creaking beneath her weight. The room felt smaller now, not because the furniture was gone, but because the illusion was. This had never been about desperation. It had been strategy. A long game. She returned to her office, folder in hand, and sat at her desk. She opened her laptop and scrolled through the old documents, the original will, her recent recordings, the lawyer correspondence. Then she stared at the name written on the final page of the Phase 2 file. Notary, Greg R. Feldman. The signature looked rushed, but it was real. Eleanor picked up the phone, 3 rings. Feldman, came the voice on the other end. Male, flat, not expecting drama. Mr. Feldman, this is Eleanor Witt. We need to talk about a will you notarized for my son, Adam Witt, dated 3 months ago. There was a pause. I'm not sure It was forged. You know it was, and if you hang up, the DA will get the full file by morning. More silence, this one longer. Finally, I didn't know what they were planning to do with it. I was told it was a precaution. Claire said you were slipping. I never saw a lawyer, just the documents. They paid me cash. I shouldn't have. You're right, Eleanor cut in. But now you get to decide whether you go down with them or stand against them. She waited. His voice was quieter now. If I testify, will you tell the DA I cooperated? Yes, Eleanor said, but I'm not asking. I'm telling. That afternoon, she met Lucia in a conference room overlooking downtown. Sunlight spilled across the long wooden table like a spotlight, and beside her sat the stack of evidence she'd carried for months. Recordings, transcripts, digital backups, and now? Phase 2. Lucia flipped through the file, lips pursed. They weren't amateurs. They built this like a business plan. They thought I was the weakness, Eleanor said, but I'm the record. Lucia nodded. We're pressing full charges, fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse. The notaries agreed to testify under oath. I'm filing everything with the DA's office today. Eleanor exhaled slowly, as if releasing the final piece of weight she'd been carrying in silence. And Eleanor, Lucia added, a small smile forming, this isn't just about keeping them out of your house. We're going after damages. Eleanor blinked. You mean, you're not just evicting them, Lucia said. You're suing them. 3 days later, across town, Adam opened the door of a cluttered one-bedroom rental with peeling paint and stale air. A process server stood in the doorway. Adam Witt? Yes. You've been served. Elder financial abuse, civil and criminal. He stared at the papers in his hand like they were in another language. What? What is this? The server didn't answer. She turned and walked away. Inside, Claire was hunched over her laptop, typing another apology for a social media scandal she still didn't understand. What is it? She asked without looking up. Adam's throat moved, but he couldn't form the words. Instead, he handed her the papers. She flipped through them quickly, then again, slower. Her face drained. You have got to be kidding me. No, Adam said finally. She's suing us. Claire scoffed, but her hands trembled as she tossed the papers onto the coffee table. I thought you said she'd never fight back. Adam stared at the floor. She didn't. He looked up. She planned it. Adam is served court papers at his new rented apartment. Eleanor isn't just evicting them, she's suing them. They planned my funeral on paper. I planned their legal funeral instead. Claire wore white, a fitted blazer, pearl earrings, hair swept into a soft chignon. She sat at the defense table with her legs crossed and a thin smile that said, "I've already won." Adam adjusted his tie nervously beside her. He hadn't shaved. His lawyer, some mid-tier firm Claire had found online, kept flipping through papers like he was hoping something might magically appear to save them. The courtroom smelled of old wood and floor polish, with the distant hum of overhead fluorescents buzzing above. Quiet chatter filled the benches behind them. A few reporters, curious spectators, 2 neighbors from the cul-de-sac. Then the side doors opened and Eleanor walked in, not alone, not frail, but flanked by a sharp 3-person legal team in tailored suits. Lucia Delgado led the pack, tablet in hand, eyes locked on the judge's bench like she'd already seen the verdict. The courtroom shifted, heads turned. Even the stenographer paused, blinking. Claire's smirk faltered. Adam swallowed. Eleanor took her seat at the plaintiff's table, calm and unbothered. She set her glasses on the table and met Claire's gaze briefly, then looked away, unimpressed. The bailiff called order. "All rise for Judge Rebecca L. Monroe." The judge entered, stern and unsmiling. She sat, looked at the case file for a long, silent moment, then said, "Let's begin." Lucia rose first. Her voice was smooth, practiced, and merciless. She presented the original will, clean and notarized. Then the forged version, with discrepancies clearly marked. Next came the audio files, each one played through the court speakers. Claire's voice laughing, Adam's voice whispering about sealing the deal before she goes. People in the back row gasped. Lucia laid down a timeline matching each betrayal to a specific date, each manipulation tracked like a war strategy. Then came the notary's sworn affidavit, projected on the screen. "I was paid to stamp a forged will without verifying its authenticity. I regret this deeply, and am cooperating fully." Claire crossed her arms tightly. Adam looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Eleanor didn't look at them, not once. Instead, she stared at the judge, unblinking, quiet, resolute. The defense attempted a rebuttal. "She's exaggerating," Claire said when she was called to testify. "We were just trying to help her manage things. She was forgetting names. She microwaved a spoon." She also remembered to restructure her estate, hide a recorder, and organize a legally binding transfer of property. The judge shot back. "That's not cognitive decline. That's strategy." Adam tried to speak, but his voice cracked. "She said she was tired all the time. We didn't mean to." "To exploit her?" Judge Monroe cut in. "To falsify legal documents? To lock her out of her own decisions?" He didn't answer. The courtroom was silent. When the judge returned from recess, her face was grave. "This court finds in favor of Eleanor Witt. All forged documents are nullified, all powers of attorney rescinded. Restitution is awarded in the full amount of damages incurred." Eleanor didn't flinch. She just exhaled softly, a breath she'd been holding since the first betrayal, but the judge wasn't finished. "I'm also referring this case to the district attorney's office for criminal investigation," she added. "Mr. Witt, Ms. Claire Everly, you may face charges of elder abuse, fraud, and perjury. Court adjourned." Claire gasped. Adam's lawyer dropped his pen. "And Eleanor?" She picked up her glasses, stood, and turned to Lucia with a quiet nod. Then, as she passed Claire, she paused, just long enough to whisper, "You should have worn black." Judge refers Claire and Adam to the district attorney's office. "They wanted to inherit my world. Now they're internet famous, for all the wrong reasons." The headline hit the front page before breakfast. "Elder Justice Served. Local Woman Wins Landmark Fraud Case Against Own Son and Fiancé." By noon, the story had jumped from the local Gazette to the trending bar on Twitter. Her name, Eleanor Witt, was now a hashtag, a symbol, a quiet rebellion made loud. Witt wins elder justice, not senile, just smart everywhere. Claire and Adam turned. Their faces were staring back at them, on TV, on Facebook shares, in Instagram stories posted by strangers dissecting every twist of the courtroom drama, and none of it could be scrubbed clean. Claire sat in her car outside the wellness studio where she worked part-time as a mindfulness coach, gripping the steering wheel like it might keep her life from spinning further. Her boss had called that morning. "We're gonna have to part ways," the voice said gently. "The press is not great for our image." Claire tried to argue, but it was already done. The studio had unfollowed her account. Her bio was wiped from their website. Even her branded yoga mat was gone from the studio floor. Adam's fall was quieter, but no less brutal. He opened his inbox that morning to a single line from his uncle, who managed the family business. "Effective immediately, your name is being removed from the trust and future business decisions." There was no signature, no goodbye, just silence. He texted. No response. Claire paced the kitchen behind him, muttering, "This is harassment. She planted that recorder. This whole thing is a setup." Adam didn't respond. His phone buzzed again. Another meme, another clip of his courtroom face frozen mid-guilt. They were viral, but not for anything they'd hoped for. Across town, Eleanor sat at her kitchen table surrounded by something far more powerful than silence: gratitude. Stacks of mail covered the table: cards, letters, flowers in soft pastels, chocolates wrapped in gold ribbon, all from women she'd never met, strangers who felt seen through her fight. She opened one envelope slowly, careful not to tear the handwritten script. "You reminded me I'm not invisible. You made me believe I'm still allowed to fight. You've started a movement." Another card read simply, "Thank you for giving us back our dignity." Eleanor placed it beside a blooming bouquet of pink tulips and swallowed the lump in her throat. She hadn't cried in court. She hadn't cried when she heard the recordings. But this quiet wave of solidarity made her chest ache in a new way. Not from loss, from being seen. Lucia called around noon, voice warm but professional. "Hope you're not too overwhelmed by the media attention." "I've had worse," Eleanor said, smiling. "When I turned 70, Adam threw a party and forgot to invite half my friends." Lucia chuckled. "Well, the good news is, you have more friends now. The really good news?" She paused, then added, "We've been contacted by 3 publishers. One of them's offering a 6-figure advance. They want your story, Eleanor." Eleanor blinked, lips parting. "My story?" "Not just the court stuff. The whole thing. The betrayal. The comeback. They're calling it the Will War." Eleanor looked at her table again. The cards, the roses, the handwritten words from strangers whose stories mirrored hers in shadows. And she realized, her voice wasn't just reclaiming the past. It was shaping the future. A publisher reaches out to turn her story into a book. They thought I was slipping. I was 5 moves ahead. The testing center smelled like lemons and ink. A quiet, sterile air hummed around Eleanor as she sat beneath a flickering fluorescent light, a clipboard in her lap and a digital tablet blinking gently beside her. The young clinician smiled politely but kept glancing at her chart like it should be thicker, messier, more broken. "Whenever you're ready, Mrs. Witt," she said, handing Eleanor a pen. Eleanor didn't reply. She was already halfway through the pattern recall sequence. It took 2 hours. Spatial memory, short-term and long-term recall, vocabulary and orientation. They showed her faces and dates, objects and colors, lists and rhythms. When they asked her to repeat back a complicated series of numbers, she gave them backward and forward, twice. When they asked her to recount a paragraph read aloud, she not only repeated it verbatim, but identified the 3 factual inconsistencies embedded within. And when it was done, the examiner looked at her as if she'd just watched someone levitate. "I'll be honest," the woman murmured, double-checking the score. "I've never seen a result this high for your age bracket." Eleanor tilted her head. "You mean for my age, or for someone they thought was losing her mind?" The woman flushed. "Your score is 97%. That's genius-level retention." Eleanor smiled, slow and knowing. "Good. Make it public." The report went live 2 days later. Lucia made sure of it. published on the county records website, signed and sealed by a third-party evaluator, backed by a state-certified neuropsychologist. Eleanor Witt shows no evidence of cognitive decline. She remains mentally sharp, lucid, and capable of independent living and legal consent. The media jumped on it instantly. Vindicated, woman accused of dementia, scores 97% on memory test. The will war just got wilder. Turns out, Eleanor never forgot a thing. The fallout was immediate. A complaint was filed with the State Medical Board against Dr. Rayner, the wellness check physician Claire had brought in like a magician's assistant. Within 48 hours, he was suspended pending investigation. Within 2 weeks, his license was officially revoked. Lucia grinned as she read the headline over coffee. One snake down, a whole nest to go. That evening, Eleanor posted a video of her own, her first. She sat in her garden, birds chirping softly in the background, a gentle breeze brushing her hair aside. She spoke calmly, no bitterness, just truth. I was blindfolded when they asked me to sign away my life, she said, but I was never blind. She held up a small recorder. This little device caught their plans, their lies, and it's been with me since day one, from the birthday will to the hallway whispers. She pressed play, letting Claire's voice ring out in crystal clarity. Once we control the paperwork, it's game over. Eleanor smiled softly into the camera. Turns out the game was still on. The clip was reposted everywhere within hours. 3 mornings later, a police cruiser pulled up in front of a dingy rental apartment on Southside Avenue. Claire, groggy and hungover, opened the door and blinked at the 2 officers standing there. "Claire Everly?" the taller one asked. "Yes?" "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit medical fraud and participation in an unlawful guardianship scheme. Please turn around." She shrieked, trying to slam the door, but they were faster. Neighbors peeked out through blinds as Claire was handcuffed and led to the cruiser in pajama pants and a torn hoodie. A camera crew across the street caught it all. Live. Adam watched the footage from the couch, expression hollow. He didn't speak, didn't move. Until finally he did. He stood up, walked to the kitchen, opened the junk drawer, and pulled out a worn envelope with a poker chip taped to the front. He sat at the table and stared at it, then picked up his phone and called a number he hadn't dialed in months. Lucia answered. "Delgado y Kane. This is Lucia." "It's Adam Witt," he said, voice brittle. "I need to speak to Eleanor." There was a pause. Then Lucia said, "Why?" "Because I need to tell her the truth," he said. "The betrayal, it didn't start with the will. It started years ago." Another pause. "I made a bet, with my friends, that I could convince her to change her will before she turned 70. It started as a joke. Then Claire made it real. Claire is arrested for medical fraud. Adam confesses the betrayal started years ago with a bet he made against Eleanor. They tricked me into signing. Now I write my own ending." The pen felt heavier this time, not because it was gold-plated, though it was. Not because the contract before her was thick with opportunity and multi-platform exposure, but because this time the ink wasn't stealing anything. It was giving. Across the polished walnut conference table, the publisher smiled. "All right, Mrs. Witt, just a signature here and we're off to the presses." Eleanor's hand didn't shake. Not like it did the day she signed Blindfolded. Not like it did when she held her husband's death certificate or her son's forged will. This time her hand was steady as stone. She signed. Just once. Her name, her story, her terms. The podcast studio was smaller than she expected. Warm lights, a subtle lavender diffuser misting in the corner, headphones that cupped her ears like they were built for truth-tellers. The host leaned forward. "You've inspired thousands. What do you want to say to women who feel powerless?" Eleanor didn't hesitate. Power can look like silence until you decide to speak. They talked for an hour, about betrayal, about trust, about the legal loopholes that trap the aging in their own homes. By the time the episode aired, Elder Eyes Open had over 1 million downloads, and Eleanor's inbox was full. 1 week later, she stood in front of a chalkboard in a community center classroom. "Protect what's yours. Financial literacy for the forgotten," was scrawled in bold pink chalk. She looked out over the folding chairs filled with women like her, some with walkers, some with notebooks, all with stories. "This isn't about fighting your children," she said. "It's about never surrendering your worth. Not in court, not in your home, not in your heart." They nodded, some with tears in their eyes. One woman raised her hand. "Is it too late to fight back?" Eleanor smiled. "If you're asking the question, then no, it's never too late." That night, a message came. Not in a court summons, not in a viral video, in a plain, unread email with the subject line, "I know you'll never read this, but I'm sorry." It was from Adam. Just his name was enough to make her pause. She hovered over the subject, heart tight. The cursor blinked. Her breath did not. She clicked it open. "Mom, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. The truth is, the betrayal didn't start with Claire. I let it begin with a joke. One I never stopped telling myself, that you were soft, gullible, mine to manage. I see now that I was never the man you raised me to be. You gave everything to me, and I gave you shadows. I'm sorry, for all of it. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Love, Adam." She read it once, then twice, then closed the laptop and stood in the silence. That weekend, Eleanor hosted a dinner. Not the kind Adam and Claire used to mock with fake toasts and stolen glances. This one was real. A long wooden table in her sunroom, pillar candles flickering, plates filled with roasted rosemary chicken and peach cobbler. Her neighbors came. Lucia came. One woman from her class brought wine and homemade bread. No manipulation, no gaslighting, just laughter, gratitude, a space reclaimed. Someone offered a toast. To Eleanor, the signature they should have feared. Laughter followed, but Eleanor just raised her glass quietly. She didn't need to speak. Later that night, after everyone left and the candles had burned low, Eleanor sat by the fireplace with a glass of wine in one hand and her will in the other. She took out a pen, uncapped it slowly, set the tip to the paper. She wasn't angry anymore, she wasn't scared, she was free. She sets down her wine glass, looks at her will, and begins to rewrite it. This time, the signature was real, and it ended everything they schemed for. The pen glided across the page with the precision of someone who no longer questioned her hand or her heart. No blindfold, no hesitation, just ink and intention. Deliberate, quiet, and irreversible. Eleanor's new will was 2 pages longer than her original. Not because it was cluttered with assets or complications, but because it held clarity, the kind of clarity born only from fire. The beneficiaries list no longer read Adam Witt and Claire Everly. Instead, it read Marian Adler, a distant niece who'd sent handwritten birthday cards every year, even after losing touch the Silver Circle Fund, a nonprofit focused on protecting the elderly from legal and domestic abuse, St. Edith's Girls' Home, where Eleanor had once spent a summer teaching piano lessons to foster children. Wits End Foundation, a newly formed charity in her name, dedicated to funding legal aid for seniors facing family betrayal, and at the very bottom, to Adam Witt and Claire Everly, $1 each in remembrance of the value they placed on loyalty. She sealed the document with a notary, her lawyer present, 2 independent witnesses, and a video recording. It was ironclad. No gaps, no loopholes, no room for another scheme. When she stood from the conference table, Eleanor felt lighter than she had in years. She didn't walk away with vengeance in her pocket. She walked away with justice in her bones. A week later, she visited the house she'd once nearly lost. The wrought iron gate squeaked a little when she pushed it open, and the garden was still untamed, vines curling around the fence like they'd been waiting for her return. The Wits End Holdings plaque had been removed. In its place, Eleanor's Haven, a safe home for women forgotten. Inside, the scent of lemon oil and clean linen drifted through the air. Fresh paint coated the walls in soft blue and sage. A team of volunteers buzzed around, hanging art, assembling welcome baskets, making beds. "Can we show her the reading room?" one volunteer asked. "It's her house," the coordinator said with a smile. "She doesn't need permission anymore." Eleanor stepped inside what used to be her sewing nook. Now it was lined with bookshelves, a fireplace, and hand-stitched pillows embroidered with quotes about strength and survival. She didn't cry. She simply placed her palm against the doorway, as if anchoring herself to the future she'd just rewritten. Later that night, she stood at her window, wrapped in her robe, sipping mint tea as the sunrise cracked through the horizon like a silent drum roll. Her porch light flickered off on its own timer. She looked down at the pen in her hand. Simple. Black. The same one she'd used to sign everything that mattered since this all began. Not gold, not flashy, just hers. No one had put it there. No one had guided her hand. No one had told her what it meant. This time, she knew. In a small apartment on the other side of town, Adam opened a letter with shaking hands. Inside, a certified copy of the final will, his name, and beside it, $1. He blinked at the page for a long time, then lowered it into his lap. Claire didn't ask what it said. She was packing boxes again, this time alone, muttering about moving back in with her sister. Adam looked out the window at the brick wall across from his, then back at the signature scrawled at the bottom of the page. Clean, bold, not blindfolded, and suddenly, he understood. Back in her quiet home, Eleanor reached for her journal, flipping to the last page. She didn't write anything new. She simply underlined the final entry. He taught me to sign blindfolded. I taught him why I never needed to. He taught me to sign blindfolded. I taught him why I never needed to.